All right, everybody. Thank you very much for joining us tonight. This is the first time that we're doing Pirkei Avot at night, on a weeknight. It's important to learn Pirkei Avot as we go from Pesach to Shavuot, because as you know, the Torah tells us that famously, that Derech Eretz Kadma la Torah, which means that the way of the world preceded the Torah, the giving of the Torah. As you know, the Torah was given only 26 generations after the creation of the world. That's why it says that we say Shabbat morning, the big chapter of Tehillim, Hodul Hashem ki tov ki le'olam chazdo, and we have a lot of ki le'olam chazdos over there, right? How many are there? 26. Why, says Rashi? Because until the giving of the Torah, which took place 26 generations after the creation, there really was no good excuse or no good reason for the world to exist, because the whole purpose of the world was for the giving of the Torah, right? So the idea that Hashem was pumping energy into the creation was all chesed. It was all one big act of kindness. It's like the government throwing money at a factory somewhere that's not really producing much, but just to give the people work, they should continue to work. It's really a chesed. The same thing over here. The world without the Torah, there was almost no good reason, but the idea that eventually there would be the Torah, that's the reason why we were able to have the world created in the first place, for that purpose. The Torah is the blueprint of the entire world. So therefore, it of course is the focus of the world, but the bottom line is that for 26 generations there was no Torah, but there was Derech Eretz. There was the way of the world. And therefore the statement is Derech Eretz Kadma la Torah. Derech Eretz came before the Torah, and the concept behind it is that in order to have a proper Kabbalat Torah on Shavuot, in order to have a proper receiving of the Torah on Shavuot, which is what we're aiming for, B'ezrat Hashem, this year, God willing, you have to first have a proper person. You have to be a mensch in order to receive the Torah. That's the idea. So that's step one. How do you do that? You have to learn Pirkei Avot. That's the custom that prevails all over, that we study Pirkei Avot in this time period. And this week is actually already the second week, so it's Perek Bet, chapter 2 of Pirkei Avot. Yes, we have a question. Pirkei Avot is a compilation of the teachings of all different rabbis, from the early Tanaim all the way until the later Tanaim. But it's all the generation of the Mishnah, which means that we're going into the depths of the greatest wisdom that is known to mankind. And today we're actually going to learn a Mishnah from none other than Hillel, the great Hillel. I'm sure you all heard of Hillel, who was tremendous tzaddik. He was the Nasi of the Sanhedrin, and he says the following. Let's jump right into it. Also, if you want to dedicate, we'd like to first of all thank our hosts, Dr. and Mrs. Chado, for hosting us in their home. Thank you very much. We really appreciate it. We would like to dedicate tonight's learning for the Refuah Shlema of Kol Cholei Israel. Yes? Latif. Yosef ben Naima. Leilui Nishmat Miriam Fega Bat Ehud Levi, of course. May her neshama go higher and higher in Gan Eden. Also for the Refuah Shlema of Kol Cholei Israel, Shmuel Moshe ben Penina, Rabbi Baruch ben Tzivia. Any other names if you want to add Refuah Shlema? Okay, we're good. Beautiful. So may Hashem send them all Refuah Shlema b'toch shar Cholei Israel. And all the victims of the recent terror attacks should have Refuah Shlema as well. Hashem. Okay, so he says the Mishnah, Perek Bet, Mishnah Hey. Hillel Omer. Hillel says, let's go through it step by step, and then we'll break it down line by line. Al tifrosh min hatzibur. Number one, do not separate yourself from the community. Al tifrosh min hatzibur. Be a part of the community. That's number one. We're going to analyze each line in depth, but That's just the first statement. Number two, ve'al ta'amin be'atzmecha ad yom motcha. Do not believe in yourself until the day of your death. I'm going to explain what each line means, but that's what he says. Don't believe in yourself until the day of your death. Number three, ve'al tadin et chavercha ad shetagia limkomo. Do not judge your fellow until you reach his place. Number four, ve'al tomar davar she'i efshar lishmoa shesofo lihishama. Do not say something that will not be clear, that's not understandable, with the understanding that eventually people will get what you mean. Be clear from the beginning. That's the way the Rambam learns. Number five, ve'al tomar lekeshe'epane eshne. Do not say that when I will have more time on my hands, that's when I will learn. That's when I will study. Shema, perhaps, lo tipane. You won't end up having more time on your hands, and therefore you won't study. Okay, so those are the words. Clear? It's clear what we said over here so far? Amazing. Okay, great. So let's go through it step by step. Hillel Omer. We start from the beginning. Al tifrosh min hatzibur. Do not separate from the tzibur, from the community. The first thing that we need to talk about is the idea that we are expected to be together, united as one group. And when somebody suffers, God forbid, we help him, we join him, we come together, we support each other, we support one another. Now over here, the Gemara tells us something which is really a powerful statement. This is the Gemara in Masechet Ta'anit, Daf Yud Aleph. It says the following: Tanu Rabbanan, our rabbis taught us in the Braita, Bizman she Yisrael shurim b'tzar, if the Jewish people are ever in a situation of suffering, uperesh echad min hatzibur, and one of the people of the community, he steps away. He doesn't partake in the suffering together with everybody else. He wants to do his own thing. He walks away. He doesn't care. Says the Gemara Masechet Ta'anit Daf Yud Aleph, Ba'im shnei malachei hasharet, two ministering angels come. Shemelavim et ha'adam, these are the angels that accompany a person. Umenichim yedehem al rosho, they place their hands on his head. Ve'omrim, and they say, Ploni zeh sheperesh min hatzibur, this individual who separated himself from the community, al yireh benechamat tzibur, let him not see the consolation, the happiness of the tzibur. Meaning, when they're finally consoled and the suffering is no longer, let him not see that. He wasn't there for them when they were suffering, so then let him not see them when they're not suffering. Now, what does that mean practically? So the Tosfot Yom Tov, one of the Mefarshim on the Mishnah says, it can mean one of two things. Either, God forbid, the guy will simply die young, God forbid, or it could mean something else. It could mean that he'll simply have to move to a new location. Either way, it's not a good thing. So over here, Chazal are teaching us, we are expected to be together as one unit, expected to be together for each other, for one another. And when somebody is going through suffering, somebody or the community is going through suffering, and this fellow completely ignores the suffering of the community and does his own thing, that is something which Hashem does not like whatsoever. There are many instances where this concept comes up. It says, for example, that Yosef HaTzadik had his two sons, Ephraim and Menashe, B'terem tavo shnot hara'av, before the years of famine in Egypt. What does that mean? It means, what?
Proper to have relations.
Correct. So says Rashi, he felt that it was not proper to have relations while everybody else is starving. He wouldn't do it. I'm not having a party over here while everybody else doesn't have food to eat. So before the famine came, he had his two sons, Ephraim and Menashe, but not while everybody was starving. says amazing things. Yeah, he was unwilling to continue during the famine. At least when the famine was going on, but afterwards, I believe it could be he had more children. But when Yaakov Avinu came down, it says the famine stopped. Now, it's also brought down similarly when Yaakov Avinu was telling his sons to go down to Egypt. It says that Yaakov said, "Lama titra'u." Why should you be seen by the surrounding people in Israel? Meaning the Ishmaelim, the people, the descendants of Esav, they all see you over here not going down to Egypt to get food. Why? Because we have plenty of food and they don't. So they are going down to Egypt because they're starving. We are in a very good situation. We have plenty. But says Yaakov Avinu, I'm sending you down anyway. You know why? Because I don't want you to look like you're having a blast while everybody else is suffering. It shouldn't be like that. It shouldn't be that you are showing the whole world that you're okay while everybody else is in real distress. So Yaakov Avinu sent his sons down to Egypt in spite of the fact that they didn't need to go. It's a very interesting thing. Look at the level of sensitivity that Yaakov had for the people that were around him.
First time or second?
First time.
Really?
First time he sent them down, they didn't even need to go. It's a Rashi.
Yeah.
Rashi Mefurash in the pasuk.
Yeah, there was a famine and they didn't go together.
Huh? When they came into Egypt, the Midrash says they separated. They looked in different places for Yosef. They thought they might find him, but initially they had gone down together. It's an interesting thing. So, and by the way, I heard of certain pious people in America. I think it was in the middle of World War II. I heard of I don't remember who this was about, but there was a certain person somewhere around here in New York that his wife wanted to repaint the house on the inside. She wanted to paint the house. And it was during the Holocaust. And at this point already people knew what was going on in Europe. And this fellow, he was a rabbi, and he said, listen, I'm sorry, I'm not repainting my house right now. I can't do it. How am I sitting here painting my house looking that it should look nice while everybody is literally being slaughtered over there? It doesn't work. So says Hillel, Al tifrosh min hatzibur. Do not separate yourself from the tzibur, because by doing so, you bring not good things upon yourself. If you want the blessing of seeing nechamat hatzibur, you want the blessing of seeing the tzibur get comforted and consoled and see them in a better situation together with them, then right now we have to be together as one at the same time, which is a very important thing. Yes.
What if you live in a community where people have the wrong priorities? But then, to what degree should you attach yourself to the rest of the community?
That's a great question. It's a tough question. To what degree do you attach yourself to the rest of the community if the community has the wrong priorities? So, a person doesn't have to be, completely together with, people that are, problematic to be around. But at the same time, you can still shower them from far away with good things. You can still find a way. You don't have to be a person's best friend to send them a bouquet of flowers for Shabbat. She's going through a hard time. She's going through this, that, whatever the situation may be. You don't have to be their best friend to send over a kugel. You know what I'm saying? It's not like the biggest deal. So but that little cake that you made for them, that makes them feel loved. It makes them feel happy. It makes them feel like I'm not air. I once somebody once complained to me about a local place, a local shul, that this person attended this shul, and they were a guest. They were not from here. And not a single lady walked over to her and said to her, hi, how are you? Nice to see you. Where are you from? Where are you going? Something like air. I don't care about you. I'm not interested in you. I could care less about you. You think the person felt good? They don't feel good. They want to feel loved. They want to feel happy. They want to feel part of something. No, thank you so much. So, that's important. By the way, al tifrosh min hatzibur, for the men at least, also means the obligation nowadays to daven with a minyan, to pray with a minyan. Extremely important. Many poskim hold that minyan today for men is required. The reason that it's required is because of the fact that we don't have the ability to focus. Halachically speaking, we don't have the power of focusing. And the halacha requires that the first blessing of Amidah, you must focus. And if you don't, then it's like you didn't daven. So how can we possibly pray alone if we are not focusing? Because praying alone requires that you focus not just the first blessing, the entire Amidah has to have kavanah from beginning to end in order for it to be a proper Amidah. So the Gemara says that there's one method that the tefillah always goes up, even if the person's a rasha, and that's called minyan. Hashem never rejects the prayer of a minyan, never. That's the power of davening with a minyan. It's very powerful, and the kavanah at this point is not, even if a person doesn't have it, it's still considered to be a tefillah that went up to Shamayim. Why? Because of the fact that they davened with a minyan. That's the power of minyan. So that's incredibly important as well. And of course, if we're talking to the ladies now, and they don't have to go to minyan, but you have to encourage and push that the husband should go to minyan every day, or the son and the grandson, they have to go to minyan. It's very important. To find the minyan is a very important thing. That's also part of not leaving the tzibur. Al tifrosh min hatzibur. Okay. Ve'al ta'amin ba'atzmecha ad yom motcha. Do not believe in yourself until the day that you die. What does this mean? It means that the Yetzer Hara never, ever gives up on a person. The Yetzer Hara, the evil inclination, always believes that it can get you at some point, that it can cause you to fail. It can cause you to do something that you're not supposed to do, whether it's getting you angry, whether it's getting you to do something that's, some kind of sin. The Yetzer Hara never stops until your dying day, till the very last day. I'm sure I told you this story. Did I ever tell you the story about the Kotzker Rebbe? I've mentioned this a bajillion times. Did I ever tell you the story? No, the Kotzker Rebbe. Kotzker Rebbe was a very sharp Rebbe. So they asked him, they said he was on his deathbed. He was about to die. So they asked him, they said, Rebbe, it says in Mishnah we just learned, never believe in yourself till the day of your death. So what could possibly be your Yetzer Hara right now? Here you are, you're about to pass away. What Yetzer Hara do you have? Well, what could it be? He says, you want to know what my Yetzer Hara is telling me to do right now? They said, yes. He said, I'll tell you. You remember the story with Rabbi Akiva when he was being tortured to death? And then he yelled out loud, Shema Yisrael Hashem Elokeinu Hashem Echad, on the top of his lungs. And he died when he said the word Echad. And all the students were around him. And they said, Rabbi Akiva, his neshama was so pure that it departed when he said the word Echad, number one. Hashem is one. So his soul left on that high, elevated level. He says, my Yetzer Hara is telling me to take every last little bit of energy that I've got and yell out loud, Shema Yisrael Hashem Elokeinu Hashem Echad, and die on the word Echad, so that all of you will say that I died on the word Echad, just like Rabbi Akiva. So on the way out, I can chap a little kavod, right? I can grab a little more extra honor. It never goes away. The Yetzer Hara is always there till the person's last minute. Nobody's exempt. I'll tell you a story. This story I saw in the book of Chacham Vadia. Chacham Vadia Alav Shalom tells this incredible story about a rabbi from a place called Soren. Apparently it's somewhere in Europe. This story took place about 180 years ago with a big rabbi. His name was Rabbi Moshe Tzvi. I have never heard of him before, this story, but apparently he was a big Av Bedin of Moshe Tzvi of Soren. So the story goes like this. There was a man that was a businessman, and he did business with another fellow in a different city called Balata, and that guy's name was Yitzchak. So this fellow, he would sell Yitzchak merchandise and Yitzchak would owe him money, he'd have to pay him the money. So one time, Yitzchak purchased a lot of different things from this man in Soren, and he owed him 1,000 ruble. It's a lot of money. It's a ton of money. 1,000 ruble at the time was a tremendous amount of money. And he comes to the rabbi one day, and he's in tears. He says, "What happened?" He says, "Well, I'll tell you. What happened is that I had what's called a shtar chov, a document, a bill of debt from this man that he signed, saying that he is admitting that he owes me the 1,000 ruble, right? He owes me. So I wanted to send him the new catalog with the new merchandise that I have, and I also wanted to give him a bill, an invoice for what he owes me. By mistake, I had prepared the envelope. By mistake, my helper had given the other envelope to this. He sent it in the mail. What was in the other envelope? The bill of debt that this guy signed, admitting that he owes me the 1,000 ruble. Now, if I'm owed money, and the proof to the fact that you owe me money is this bill of debt with your signature, and I hand you back that bill of debt, if you then take it and destroy it, I have no more proof. So by mistake, what happened was his helper had sent in the mail with the postal service the bill of debt that this guy owes him 1,000 ruble. Okay, he realizes the mistake. He hopes this guy Yitzchak on the other end is going to be an honorable, respectable man. He sends him a letter saying, "Listen, by mistake, I sent you the document saying that you owe me the money with your signature. Would you be so kind and send it back?" No response. He sends him again a letter in the mail. "Listen, you might not have gotten the last letter, but there was a mistake. Please send me back the document that says that you owe me the money." No response. He sends him a third letter saying, "Please send me back the document." And then this time he gets a response. The response is what they call lahadam, lo hayu dvarim meolam, which means never happened. I don't know what you're talking about. I don't owe you 1,000 ruble, and I never got any merchandise from you, and I don't really know you. Leave me alone, and that's that. The guy totally denied ever buying anything from him, ever owing him money. He denied the whole entire thing from A to Z. He comes to the rabbi, Rav Tzvi Moshe, and he asks him, "What do I do?" So again, this guy was in a town called Blata. So he says, "Okay, in a month, I'm going to head over to Blata because this rabbi was the Av Bedin of multiple towns in the area." He says, I have to be there in a month. And when I go, you come with me. Okay. So a month later, he goes, and they are in this town, Blata. And being that the Av Betin, the head of the Betin is Rav Tzvi Moshe, so this man goes to the Av Betin. He says, "I'd like to summon Yitzchak to court." And he sends him a subpoena. "Come to the Bedin. You are hereby summoned. You have to come, and we're gonna go through whatever claims you may have against each other." So they're in the court. They appear before the rabbi and his Bedin, and they both express exactly what they feel happened. This guy says that he owes me 1,000 ruble. And the guy said, if I don't have 1,000 ruble, I'm going to go bankrupt, because it was a tremendous amount of money. So he really needed it. So he says, he owes me 1,000 ruble. He never paid me. And by mistake, I sent him the bill of debt that he owes me. And he I don't know, he must have done something to it. It's gone. So the guy said, I don't know what he's talking about. He's making up stories. The whole thing never happened. I don't know him a penny. Okay. The Bedin asks everyone to leave, and then they reconvene. The rabbi, Rav Tzvi Moshe, stands up, and he says, the Bedin has issued a verdict. You, Yitzchak, have to pay 1,000 ruble to this man. The guy said, what? Based on what? What proof do you have? You know the rules. The rules are, hamotzi mechavero alav harayah. If you're coming to take money out of my pocket, you have to prove that I owe you the money. And you have no proof. What proof did he bring? He said a story. You can't take money out of my pocket based on some random story. You need evidence, and there's no evidence. So I will not adhere to the ruling. So this Rav Tzvi Moshe, he went ahead and he said, how dare you disrespect my psak? Not only are you not listening to what I have to say, but you have the audacity to stand up and say things as if I don't know what I'm talking about. He says, because you did that, I was going to hide your shame from you. But now I can shame you publicly because you disgraced my psak. He says, you want to know what exactly happened? I'll tell you what happened. You received a letter. You received a letter in the mail. And it was a Friday night. Your wife had already lit Shabbat candles. And she was on her way to go to the cellar to get some wine in order for you to say Kiddush. And you look at the piece of mail that the non-Jewish mailman is delivering to you. It looks interesting. You then proceeded to ask the Gentile mailman to open the envelope for you. You then proceeded to read what it said, and you couldn't believe what it was. It was the bill of debt with your signature that you owe 1,000 rubles to this man, which you then took and then literally went to the Shabbat candles that your wife had just lit and burnt it and the envelope in the Shabbat candles. That's what you did. So there shouldn't be any evidence about what you did. So this guy heard the rabbi reveal his entire story out to the public, and he fainted. He fainted in the courtroom. He fainted in the Beit Din. They managed to wake him up. They managed to get him up. And then he started to ask for forgiveness. He said, please, mechila, I want to accept on myself to do teshuvah. I want to accept to do, whatever fasts and sigufim. I'll roll in the snow. I'll do whatever you want. Just please be mochel me. So he said, wait right there. He tells everyone in the courtroom, I'm sure you all think that some malach, some angel spoke to me. I'm sure you think that I have Ruach HaKodesh. He says, well, I have news for you. I would like to introduce you to my malach, my angel. And he opens up the door of the Beit Din, and out comes this little 10-year-old boy. This 10-year-old boy is actually the nephew of this man, Yitzchak. And this 10-year-old boy was an orphan. His parents both died. And this Yitzchak took him in to save him and to raise him and to do everything good for him. He sees that. His nephew betrayed him, told the story that he saw to the rabbi. He was livid. So this rabbi said, I know what you're thinking. You're going to treat him differently now? No. You're required to take care of him. You're required to still send him to yeshiva. You're required to treat him exactly the way you've been treating him until now. But this kid revealed everything to me. So the guy was besides himself. He had no idea what to do. And he was told to go and get the money. He went, he got the money. He did what he had to do. It was very shameful. Not only was he a thief, but it actually turned out that he was willing to break Shabbat in order to save his 1,000 ruble. Okay. So later on, this Rav Tzvi Moshe was speaking to people, and they wanted to know, how did he get to this? He's not even from this town. How does he know about this kid? How did this even happen? So he said, when I got to this town, I asked around about this guy, Yitzchak. I asked people, what's he like? How does he conduct himself? Everyone said he's Adam Kasher. He's a kosher individual. He's a special guy. He's very giving. He gives a lot of tzedakah. He's a very lovely man. And everybody had nothing but good things to say. Then I went to the cheder. I wanted to see if he had any kids there. And they told me that he has this nephew. So I asked the Rabbi. I said, Rabbi, how do you see this family, this kid, this dad, this uncle? Tell me what you know about him. And he says, listen, everybody says he's a Shamayim. He has a very good name in the community. He's wonderful. He's this, he's that. He says, there was one time that his nephew said something which didn't make sense to me. His nephew said that he saw his uncle violating Shabbat. And I immediately shut him up. I said, kids, they say all kinds of dumb things. I said, this guy wouldn't do that. It doesn't make any sense. So I shut him up right away. And I said, don't ever say that again. Why are you saying not nice things about your uncle? He takes care of you. He's this, he's that. And the Rebbe said, and he really is an amazing guy. He always pays me on time. He always takes care of me. He's always very good to me. So I didn't think much of it. he said, get me that kid. He said, what do you mean? He says, well, he's in Cheder now, right? So come secretly, bring him to me. I want to talk to that kid. So he says to the kid, listen, I heard that you said something about your uncle to your friends. You were talking about what he did. Tell me what he did. And that's how I got the whole story from this child. But what we see is that here's an individual that is, according to the whole community, a Yerei Shamayim, somebody who keeps Torah and mitzvot, somebody who supports local institutions, Baal Tzedakah. And guess what? He probably was a wonderful human being. He was probably a wonderful person. I have no doubt this guy was top of the line. Everybody said so. You don't just get a good name like that out of nowhere. He's a guy in the community that everybody loves, trusts, and he's the best. So what happened? What happened is the Yetzer Hara got him so bad. 1,000 ruble. Can you imagine? Let's imagine for a second. It's the ability to keep, let's say, $500,000 in your pocket, $1 million in your pocket. You get to keep $1 million, and it's a lot of money. You don't have to give it now. So now you get to keep it for yourself. That's where the Yetzer Hara tempted him and got him. And Avera goreret Avera, one sin brings to another. And then he was able to even violate Shabbat that he held so dear to himself. What happened? That's what Chazal said. Al ta'amin ba'atzmecha ad yom motcha. Nobody's exempt from the Yetzer Hara. Nobody's exempt from the temptation. Nobody's exempt from the challenges, from the nisyonot. And everybody has to deal with them. That's why we daven every day. Velo lidei nisayon. We pray every day, Hashem, don't bring me to a nisayon. I don't want challenges. I don't want to have these difficulties. I don't want this temptation. I want to be free of temptation. Don't challenge me. That's a very important thing. Just to give one last point about that, there was a man, Yochanan Kohen Gadol. Yochanan Kohen Gadol was the Kohen Gadol for 80 years. In this week's parasha, we learn about the Kohen Gadol, what he had to do on Yom Kippur. It says in the Mishnah they would tie a golden chain around the leg of the Kohen Gadol. You know why? Every Yom Kippur, they would tie a golden chain, exactly. Because if you go into the Kodesh HaKodashim on Yom Kippur, you only go there once a year. If you go into Kodesh HaKodashim and you have one thought that is not related to the service of the temple, in other words, one bad thought, that's it. The guy is dead on the spot. He drops dead and nobody can get him. So they had to tie a golden chain around him so that they should be able to pull him out. That's a very serious thing. This man did it 80 times. He was perfect 80 years in a row. Perfect. He was the holiest man in the nation. He did wonderful things for the Jewish people. And yet still at the end of his life, he became a heretic. It's doki. It's amazing. How does that happen? Yochanan Kohen Gadol. Yochanan the high priest. 80 years he was perfect. And at the end, he switched. That's why Chazal say, Al ta'amin ba'atzmecha ad yom motcha. Don't believe in yourself to the day of death. Meaning, you're not exempt from Yetzer Hara. There's always Yetzer Hara. Now, these are great people that we're talking about. We're talking about giants. How much more so? If it could happen to them, how much more so could happen to us? To begin with, we know that we have so much to improve. So when we think that we know better and we can look down at other people, hey, very quickly, you have your Yetzer Hara, you have your own things to deal with. Don't just believe that you are perfect. Even the people that actually were perfect, eventually, they lost it, which is a very, very important lesson. Okay. Says the Mishnah, Ve'al tadin et chavercha ad shetagia limkom. Do not judge your fellow until you reach his place. That is an incredible, incredible lesson. Over here, Chazal tell us an important rule. First of all, you should know it's a mitzvah d'oraita. It's one of the 613 mitzvot according to many. B'tzedek tishpot amitecha, which means you have to judge your fellow favorably. So even if you see him doing something that looks really, really, really bad, but the mitzvah that we have is to judge that person favorably. So you see a person coming out of Kentucky Fried Chicken with a basket of chicken, with a bucket of chicken. You see it. You see, he's a Jewish man coming out of Kentucky Fried Chicken with the wings and with all that. He's about to dig in. So you have a mitzvah to try and say something like, maybe he's bringing it for his cleaning lady. Maybe he's getting it for his workers. Maybe there's something else that he has a plan. Maybe it's for his dog. Come up with something to try and look at the person in a positive light. And that's a very important thing, because a lot of times we tend to gossip and say things about other people based on how we view them. But it's our job to not view them that way in the first place. To say, that's not proper. That I should look at this guy or this woman like she is A, B, C. Maybe there's a reason for that. Maybe there's background that I'm not aware of. Maybe there's something I have to try and judge her favorably. Now, the Sfat Emet goes on to say, Al tadin et chaverecha ad shetagia limkomo means that you have to be in that person's shoes in order to actually be allowed to judge him. How do you get into a person's shoes? When is that point? So he goes on to say, I'll tell you when that point is. When you have the same spouse as that person, the same boss or job as that person, when you went to the same school as that person, when you had the same parents and siblings as that person, same in-laws as that person, when you went through all of these things that this person is going through, and all these factors and variables played the role that they did to him, now they're doing that to you, that's when you can judge him. And will that ever happen? No. So that means this Mishnah is coming and saying that you have absolutely no right to judge anybody else. You have no idea what this guy is going through. You have no idea the package that he's dealing with. You have no clue what he's going through. And therefore, you have no right to judge him. And if we would live like that, there would be far less gossip. Because what will we gossip about? He's like this, he's like that. He did this, she did that. You don't know anything about this person. You have no idea what happened in his lifetime that causes him to behave like that. And look, there are times where people really do misbehave and they're out of line and they're wrong, dead wrong. But your job is to say, okay, I don't know. I don't know what's going on in their lives. May they live and be well. I take it easy and we move on. Instead of causing friction and fights and getting into issues, machloket, God forbid, that's a really big problem that we have to eliminate. Okay, now let's continue. Don't judge your fellow until you reach his place. Very important. Okay. By the way, about what we said before, I wanted to share with you one more story. This is about Al Tamid Ba'atzmecha Ad Yom Motcha. Don't believe in yourself till the day of your death. So there's a story about no less than the great Rabbi Eli Lopian. Rabbi Eli Lopian was one of the greatest Talmidei Chachamim in Eretz Yisrael. He was a very, very big tzaddik. They even say about him that he had revelations of Eliyahu Navi. And he wasn't alive that long ago. He passed away, I don't know exactly when, maybe in the 60s or 70s, early 70s. He wasn't alive that long. He was a very holy, holy, special man. Just a story from him, just to bring it home, that last point. He said there was a boy that that was in his yeshiva. It's called Kfar Hasidim. It's not far from Haifa. So this boy was 18. And he said, he came to Rabbi Eli Lopian. He said, I want to go to a wedding. And the people at this wedding are probably not going to be dressed properly, but I still want to attend. And I won't look. There's going to be things that I shouldn't see. So I make sure not to look. Can I go, Rabbi? That's what he asked his rabbi. So the rabbi at this point in his life was very old. And one eye was totally blind. The other eye, he saw like maybe 15, 20%. So he had like 15% of his eye was working. So he says, okay, young man, let me tell you a story. He says, this morning, again, we're talking about somebody that is already in his, I think, 80s. He says, this morning, I was walking down the block to the yeshiva, and a young lady walked right by me. And my Yetzer Hara told me, look at her. I didn't. But that's what my Yetzer Hara told me to do, right? He says, and I'm in my 80s, and I can only see out of 50% of one eye. He says, you're 18 years old. Are you serious? He says, no, it's not happening. The person has to be real. But that's exactly the personification of Al Ta'amin Ba'atzmecha Ad Yom Mota. Don't believe in yourself until the day that you die. It's an amazing thing. What? Now, says the Mishnah, Ve'al tomar davar, do not say something she'i efshar lishmoa shesofo lihishama. Don't say something, this is the way the Rambam learns, do not say something unclear. Meaning, a lot of times people think that by being ambiguous, by not explaining exactly what they mean to say, that there's some kind of wisdom that you should be searching for in my words, and you should be looking into what I'm saying, and eventually you'll understand what I mean. You're not clear on what you actually mean. So the Mishnah tells us that's a very big mistake, because what happens is sometimes your words are misinterpreted because they're not clear. You mean one thing, and people didn't understand it like that, and therefore they will come up with a totally wrong conclusion. I have experienced this personally. I don't believe that I was terribly unclear, but I've been quoted by people, meaning people have quoted me saying things that I really, really have never said in my entire life. I mean, I can't even begin to tell you. Apparently one time, I eventually figured out why the guy said this. One time I was quoted around, somebody was at there was a Friday night meal somewhere in Harbor Hills over there, and some guy was saying that Rabbi Kaniel says that you're allowed to sleep with married women. What? Yeah. That's what he said. So I was like, it's interesting. So if she's single, no. Single, that's like, you can't do. But married, yes. I couldn't even understand. So it dawned upon me that I was once explaining between Mincha and Mariv that there's a Rashi that says that by a war, when the Jewish army goes out to war, so it says that if a person sees an Eshet Yefat Toar, which means a Gentile who is an attractive lady, so he's allowed to take her. And Rashi says that even if this woman was married, he can still take her in war. That's what. So this fellow took from that a Jew is allowed to sleep with a man. So again, that's what he's saying in the Mishnah. You have to be clear. You have to be very clear. So in a sense, it wasn't clear. It wasn't a clear enough explanation. So therefore, people took it the wrong way. It happens a lot, and a lot of times you hear people quoting rabbis. Yeah, I heard this rabbi say this rabbi said that, and meanwhile the rabbi I call him up. Did you say no? I never said that. I never meant. This is what I meant. Oh, that's what you meant. Okay, So, a lot of times it's unclear. So you have to make sure that whatever you say, and it doesn't have to be a rabbi. It's like anybody. In order that you should there shouldn't be any misunderstandings. You have to be clear, and of course, you have to communicate in the first place. Because people that don't communicate, a lot of times, that's the problem, by the way, in my opinion, with text messages. A lot of times text messaging, you don't really get the full idea of what the person means. And text sometimes sounds like it's a mean text, but it doesn't mean to be a mean text. They just didn't have enough time to respond. Or, it's so much better if you can to communicate with actual talking. Or even a voice note is better because you hear the tone of the person, you hear what he's trying to say. It doesn't sound like it's right, malevolent. You can understand the person's just trying to say something else, but the text sometimes comes across the wrong way. Okay. And lastly, but not least, Al Tomar, do not say, do not say when I will have time, I will study, I will learn Torah, Shema lo tipane, because perhaps you won't have time. This is what's that? It will never have time, right? This is something which is so important because, we don't realize, but time really goes by every day. It's another day, another week, another month, and there's so much opportunity. There's so much time that we could have utilized better. And we fail to do so. We can accomplish so much, and we don't utilize our time properly. It's so important to realize that's the beauty of, let's say, something like Daf Yomi, which is amazing, because you're learning just one daf a day. It's not easy, it's very hard, but you're doing it. And it's not so much, I've heard this quote beautifully, it's not so much about the daf as it is about the yomi, that it's a consistent, every single day, you're learning X, you're learning Y, and you come with a plan. They said, I remember at the Siyum HaShas of, not this past one, but the previous one at MetLife Stadium, Rabbi Friend said over a story about the Mir Rosh Yeshiva, Rabbi Nassim Tzvi Finkel, that he was once talking with a person that was a supporter of the yeshiva, and he was telling him, listen, what's going to be with your learning? You're supporting, which is great, but what about your own personal learning? So he told him, well, I hope to finish Shas. He says, you hope to finish Shas is not good enough. You have to have a plan. Go sit down and come up with a plan. And the man came back and he said, listen, I sat down with myself and I came up with a plan. If I want to finish Shas, it's going to take me 20 years. He says, okay, but that's a plan. You have 20 years. Do it. Come up with a plan and do it. The fact that that's going to take you a long time, okay, but at least you have an idea. You set goals. You have an idea of what you want to accomplish, and that way you do it. But just like this, to just, one day goes by, another day goes by, and you don't have something set, that's something which is problematic. Person that doesn't make the time will never find the time. That's an interesting thing. It says a person has to be kovea itim la Torah. Kovea means to set a fixed time and never miss it. No matter what happens, I have a fixed time, I don't miss it. That's the simple meaning of kovea. But if you learn Sefer Malachi, you'll see that kovea has another meaning as well. It says, Hayikba Adam Elokim. Can a person steal from God? The Navi Malachi says kovea means to steal. Hayikba Adam Elokim. And then Hashem says, we say, how did we steal from you, Hashem? What did we do? And then Hashem says, you didn't give Trumot and Ma'asrot, so that's called stealing. Okay? So, but you see, the Mefarshim say that kovea means to steal as well. So says the Vilna Gaon, you know what it means to be kovea itim Torah? It means that you also have to steal time for Torah. Find time that's not there for you. Steal time for Torah. And there's a beautiful story about a man, his name was Rabbi Reuven Bengis. Beautiful story about him, that he used to finish the Shas in a crazy, very fast, like once every few months. Once every 6 months or so, he finished the whole thing. He had a set thing he would learn. Once every 6 months, he finished it. One time, but it wasn't a big deal for him anymore because he did it so often. Usually, if somebody finishes Shas, they make a whole big party, the celebration. But by him, he did it so often that it wasn't like such a big deal. One time, he finished the Shas, like maybe a month after the last time that he did it, which is physically, humanly impossible. It's thousands of pages of Gemara. It's not possible. So, and he made a huge celebration, huge party, Rabbi Reuven Bengis. So everyone asked him, they said, Rabbeinu, every person is just a human being. How did you just finished the Shas. How could you possibly finish it a month later? It's not possible physically. It's not an option. So he said, you don't understand. This is one of my most prized siyumim I've ever made in my entire life. And I'll explain to you why. This is a siyum based off of all the time that I used to sit around waiting for something. Let's say I was at a bus stop. I had a seder. I had a plan for what to do at any moment where I'm just sitting around. I'm waiting for a chuppah to start. I have to be there, so I'm sitting there. So what I'm going to do is I'm just sitting down. So I have a plan for what to do at that time. So from all of that time, throughout all of the years, 5 minutes here, 5 minutes there, 5 minutes there, 10 minutes here, at a bus stop, at the doctor's office, over here, over there, etc. I gathered all those times, and I managed to finish the Shas from just those 5 minutes, 5 minutes, 5 minutes. It's amazing. A person is able to do that. We don't realize how much time slips through our fingers. So therefore, don't just say, well, if I get the chance. No, you make the chance. You steal the chance. right? To learn. That's a very important thing. And therefore, and especially for for our better halves, they have to push us and push us to learn and to learn more and more. And B'ezras Hashem, we should grow that way, God willing, not losing time, not wasting time. We shouldn't look back and say, wow, chabal, all the time that we could have had, we wasted so much. God forbid. We should be able to say we used our time wisely. All right, guys, we'll stop over here. Chazakim u'bruchim. Thank you very much to the Shadows for hosting us. Thank you on Zoom, everybody. We appreciate you guys coming. All the best.
Thank you.
Thank you.